Yep, she is. Hi, Cynthia. Jade says hi. That's not complex. No, it's not complex. What makes it, okay. So listen up. So on your quiz, you guys are arguing on a complex trinomial, but that number you were able to factor out from everything in the expression. So it's not a complex trinomial. This one over here, do I have a common factor at all? 3x squared plus x minus 4. Is there a common factor here? No. Okay, so this is considered a complex trinomial because there are no common factors. So before we get into complex trinomials, let's start off with a warm-up of just simple trinomials. So let's say I have x squared plus 4x plus 3. You can tell me how to factor that simple trinomial. X squared plus 4x plus 3. Ashton. Yep. Good. So what are my factors going to be? Nope, not x plus 4 and x plus 3. What numbers did we use?
Oh, 3.
Yeah. So it's going to be x plus 3 and x plus 1. We'll do one more so that you guys are comfortable with this. So x squared minus 5x plus 6. So who can tell me how to factor this one out? Olivia.
It would be -6 and 1.
-6. Wait, but -6 times 1 gives me what?
I'm sorry, it would be -6.
-1.
Yep, -2 and -3. So -2 times -3 gives me +6. And -2 plus -3 gives me -5, which is what we want. So what are my two factors, Jade?
-2
Mm-hmm.
and x plus 3.
Nope, x minus 3. So these are simple trinomials because I can just write the brackets right away. So when a trinomial is written as the product of two binomials, it is in factored form. So when you have two brackets, that is called factored form. However, when you factor a trinomial of the form ax squared, where you have a number as your a plus bx plus c, it is similar to factoring the trinomials when we have simple trinomials. So it's the same way you go about factoring, except there are two strategies that we can use. There are two ways that we can factor complex trinomials. We have something called method 1, which is my factor by grouping. or the second method, which is called the crisscross method. So you guys are going to get the chance to see both, and you guys get to pick which one you would rather do. So we'll do the first one with the factor by grouping. So again, same idea. In this case, we have a number in front of our x squared. So the product, so the number we have to multiply by has to be the multiplication between these two. So what's 3 times -4? So that's going to be my product. So I need two numbers that add up to -12. Or sorry, multiply to -12. What is my middle term? What's the number in front of the x? 1. Which means I need two numbers that multiply to -12, but those same numbers have to add up to +1. Can anyone think of the possibilities here? Two numbers that multiply to -12, and those same two numbers have to add up to give me +1. Which one's positive? Which one's negative?
4 is positive, 3 is negative.
Okay. So 4 times -3 gives me 12, which is good. Now 4 plus -3 gives me +1, which is good. Because we have that number in front of my x squared, I can no longer say x plus 4, x minus 3. Can anyone tell me why I can't do that anymore? Try to FOIL it. Do I end up getting 3x squared when I FOIL my x's together? No. I just get x squared, which is not the same as 3x squared. So this is where factoring by grouping comes in. So my middle term can be written as 4x minus 3x, because 4x minus 3x gives me what? What's 4x, right? Which is what our middle term is. So let me write it as 3x squared minus 3x plus 4x minus 4. The reason I can do this is because, like we said, -3x plus 4x gives me my middle term x. So now we will factor by grouping, which means let's take the first two together and see what the common factor is. So between 3x squared and -3x, what is my common factor, Brooklyn? 3x. Which means I have to divide each of these guys by 3x. So what's left over in my bracket? Brooklyn?
X equals 1.
X minus 1. Good. Now the next one I have to focus on is 4x and minus 4. So what's my greatest common factor between 4x and -4? Olivia? 4. And what's left over?
X minus
X minus 1. Good. So what do you guys notice about these brackets?
They're the same.
They're the same. So what is my final factor going to be? Jade?
4 plus x, 4,
Mhm.
in one bracket, and then x minus 1.
So this is what we call factoring by grouping complex trinomials.
Are we going to have to know both of them?
I'm going to show you both. Whatever one you're most comfortable with, pick it. Because I'm not going to tell you on the test, use grouping or use crisscross method. You can pick whatever one. So easy, kind of-ish? Okay. So for B, we're going to use our crisscross method. So for some of you, it might be easier. For some of you, it might be a bit harder. With the crisscross method, we're just using the numbers at the end, at the beginning, and at the end. We're not going to worry about the middle number yet.
This method was factored.
Yeah, factor by grouping. That was the first one. Okay. So for B, we have 2a squared minus 13a plus 21. So we're going to focus on the 2a squared and the 21. Okay. So what are two numbers that multiply to give me 2? So we're going to focus on this guy first. Two numbers that multiply to give me 2. 2 and 1. Okay, good. Now, what are two numbers that multiply to give me 21? So, okay, let's try 7 and 2. Okay. Each of these is going to have an A. 7 and 3. There we go. Each of these is going to have an A. What's 2a times 7? 14a. What's a times 3? 3a. Do these add up to give me negative 13a? No, they give me 17a. So these two don't work. Okay. Can anyone else give me two other numbers that give me positive 21? Yeah, multiplying. Nope. Nope. So there's only 7 and 3 and 1 and 21. So we then would have to use negative 7 and negative 3. So let's erase this one. Let's try negative 3 and negative 7. So what's 2a times negative 3? Negative 6a. And what's a times negative 7? Do these two add up to give me negative 13a? Yeah.
So why do they have to add up negative 13a?
Because they always have to add up to give me my middle term. So now, remember how we would have to factor by grouping and all that stuff? So the crisscross method, crisscross, so what's my first factor going to be? 2a subtract 7. And what's my other factor going to be? A minus 3. So the crisscross method allows you to avoid the grouping part and just get straight into the factor part. Yes, Rita?
How come we didn't put A beside negative 3 and negative?
I can do that as well.
Would we add it though to like in the bracket or no?
Pardon?
Would we add them to A into the brackets?
For which one?
Like you see how there's 2A and then 6A?
From A? Yeah.
Would we need to do negative 7A as well, like adding it into?
No. That's why I said the crisscross method avoids the grouping part. So you
okay.
completely take it away. So like I said, this might be easier for some, but harder for others. Okay? So it's the same idea. Two numbers that multiply to negative 21. Okay? But these guys, when you multiply them together, have to add up to negative 13a. So as you can see here with the crisscross method, in comparison to my first one, it's significantly less steps. But if you want to factor by grouping, that is completely fine. So for C, what do you guys want to do? Grouping or crisscross? Grouping? We can do both. That's fine. I don't mind that. Remember, crisscross avoids the grouping part, and grouping just takes longer. But whatever you guys feel comfortable with, we'll do.
Grouping first and
Yeah, we'll do both. So for C, we're going to do the first method. So we're going to do method 1. So you have 3y squared plus 5y plus 1. So again, what is our product going to be? Product means what is the number in front of the y squared multiplied by the number at the end? What's 3 times 1? 3. And my sum is my middle term. So what does it have to add up to? 5. Is this even possible? No, it's not. Okay. Is this one possible? Yes or no?
What you have to add up?
Pardon?
What's the P and the S stand for?
Oh, the P is product. So whatever the number in front of y squared or x squared times the number at the end. And then your sum is the middle term. In this case, you guys are probably going to notice right away, am I able to factor this at all? Yes or no? What are the only numbers that can be multiplied to get 3? So 3 times 1 gives me 3. However, 3 plus 1 gives me 4, which means that I cannot factor this. I think this is the... No, you leave it as is. Whenever you can't factor, you leave it as is.
Okay, sorry, and the P is the first.
The first number multiplied by the last number.
Okay.
And then your S is your middle number. Yeah, so we picked there's an example here that's not possible. So yeah.
So it's the first number multiplied by the other.
Yeah.
The left.
So yeah, not factorable. Wow. Yeah, the only reason why this is not factorable is because it's only 3 and 1 works. 3 times 1 is 3 and 3 plus 1 is 4, which is not the same thing as 5.
Okay, and so after you multiply the two numbers,
You have
it
to
has to
add.
equal the middle one?
Yep. So after you multiply the two numbers, then you have to add those same two numbers and it has to give you the middle one. So in this case, 3 plus 1 is 4, which is not the same as 5.
Okay, and then say if it didn't equal the middle one, how would you?
If it did,
Yeah.
I'll show you on the next one. Okay. So this one we have 5x squared minus 12x minus 6. So again, we'll use method 1. So what is my product? What two numbers are being multiplied together? What's my product? Negative 30. Thank you, Jake. What is my sum? So what's my middle term? Negative 12. So I need two numbers to multiply to negative 30 and add up to negative 12. You guys got it easy so far. Not factorable because the factors don't work. Now the next one does work. I already did it, so it works. Okay, so what's my product here? What's 20 times -6? -120. And what is my sum, my middle term? Okay, perfect. So what are two numbers that multiply to -120 and add up to -7? This is gonna take a bit of time. I'm gonna tell you right now, the grouping method works better than the crisscross method here. Yes, Brooklyn. 5 times 8. Which one's positive? Which one's negative?
Not 5 times
15, right?
15 times.
Yeah. Which one's positive? Which one's negative? Okay. -15 times 8. That gives me -120, which is good.
Does it not have to equal the sum?
Yeah, so I have to do -15 plus 8, which gives me what? -7. So now I can start my factor by grouping. So I have 20x squared. We use -15, so it's going to be -15x plus 8x minus 6. So we know -15x plus 8x, that gives me -7x because we just checked. So now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the groupings. We're going to take our first two terms, which is 20x squared and -15x, and figure out what the common factor is between those two terms. Okay, 5x. So the greatest common factor between 20 and 15 is 5. The greatest common factor between x squared and x is just x. So now I divide both terms by 5x. So again, we're going to start with the numbers. What's 20 divided by 5? 4. What's x squared divided by x? Just x. And then next we have -15 divided by +5, which gives me what? -3. And x divided by x just gives me 1. So I'm stuck with 4x minus 3. Now let's go on to the next one. So I have 8x minus 6. What's the biggest common factor between 8x and -6? 2. +2. Which means I'm dividing both of these guys by 2. So what's 8x divided by 2? 4x. What's -6 divided by 2? -3. Are both of my brackets the same? Yeah. So what is my final answer going to be? Yep.
Would they always be the same one?
So in order for the factor to work, your brackets have to be the same always. Yeah.
And these ones, are we gonna have to do the multiplying by -1 to like change it?
Sometimes. So for this one, the crisscross method would be more tedious than the grouping one. So I'm going to do method 2 over here. The reason why method 2, the crisscross method, would be more difficult is because you can multiply numbers to get 20 a lot of ways, right? You can do 2 times 10, 5 times 4, 20 times 1, and so on and so forth. When you're working with bigger numbers like this, like 20x squared, The factoring by grouping would work best.
Doesn't matter.
So method 2, let's say we have 5 and 4. So we have, let's see, 20x squared over here minus 7x minus 6. So my second method is we have to figure out two numbers that multiply to 20. So in this case, we'll do 5 and 4. And what are two numbers that give me negative 6, that multiply to negative 6? Which one's positive, which one's negative? Okay, we'll do negative 3 and 2. So what is 5x times negative 3? Okay, what is 4x times 2? Okay, when I add those together, do I get negative 7x? What's negative 15x plus 8x? Okay, so good. So now with the crisscross method, what's my first factor going to be? Yep. And what's my second factor? Yeah, it's somewhat easier, but some of you may have started with, let's say, 10x and 2x, and may have been negative 3 and 2. Then you would have gone negative 30x and 4x, and that wouldn't have worked. And then you guys would have had to start over again. So grouping is the safest way. The crisscross method is easier if the number in front of x squared is small and doesn't have a lot of factors. So let's try F. So F, I want you guys to do on your own. Pick whatever method you feel comfortable with and try to see if you can solve it on your own. So for F, we have 4a squared minus 9ab minus 9b squared. I'm going to keep E up just in case some of you guys have not copied it yet. So we have 4a squared minus 9ab minus 9b squared. So what's my product? What do I have to multiply? What's my product? Olivia? Okay, and what's my sum? What's the middle guy? -9. Perfect. So now I need two numbers that multiply to -36 and add up to -9, which is what? Alicia? So -12 times 3 is -36, which is good. Now -12 plus 3 gives me -9, which is also good. So some of you use the crisscross method, which was good. Others use the factoring by grouping, which is also fine. So we're going to rewrite 4a squared minus 12ab plus 3ab minus 9b squared. So now I'm going to focus on the grouping part. Yes, Jade.
How do you know, like,
Which way to write it?
yeah, like, how can you?
So if I put 4a squared plus 3ab first, does 4 and a have a common factor? 4a squared and 3ab? They do. It's just a, right?
But it's just the a squared.
Yeah, but remember, it's always the lowest exponent. That's the common factor. So you can write it the other way. It's fine. It just might become a bit harder to do.
But where do you get -12ab and 3ab?
From here, -12 and +3.
So why did you put ab?
Because those, when you add those up together, so what's -12ab plus 3ab? What does that give you? Yep, gives you
So
-9ab.
you have to put the whatever variable is.
So the factors that you use, you just put the variable from the middle in it after. So let's look at 4a squared and -12ab. Between 4 and 12, what's the greatest common factor? No? 4. And what's common between a squared and ab? Just a. Which means I'm dividing each of these guys by 4a. So I'm left with a minus 3b. Now let's look at my next one. 3ab and -9b squared. What's common between 3 and -9? Pardon? Okay, we're talking about the number first. Yeah, b is fine. 3b. You're good, you're fine. You just told me the variable part. So we divide each of these by 3b, which means I'm left with a minus 3b.
What happens to the square?
Which one? At the end? Because what's b squared divided by b? It's just b, right? So what's my final answer then? Jade?
A bracket 4 plus 3b.
4a plus 3b.
Close
Okay.
the bracket and then a minus 3b.
Good. Yep.
I always put like a 1
So
before the A. I don't know why Robert does that. Would that be wrong?
it's just not, like, notation wise, it's not correct. Because you're just because I know that you're multiplying, a is just a by itself. I don't need to know that's being multiplied by 1. That's fine. And now I know one of you did the crisscross method, so we'll do method 2. So you looked at 4a squared and 9b. So you guys probably did 4a and 1a. And the factors that you guys used were probably what, -3, or what?
Yeah, -3 and like
-3 and +3. So 4a times -3 gives me -12a. A times 3 gives me 3a. Now when I add those together, that gives me -9a, which is exactly what I want. So now with the crisscross method, my first bracket is 4a plus 3. And my second bracket is just a minus 3.
Oh, I'm supposed to put like the B as well.
AB, sorry, whoops. Thank you, Camilla. So this would be using method 2. So G and H, I want you guys to do on your own. We're gonna do the last word problem. So for G and H, you guys are gonna do it after the lesson, and you're gonna show me your answer. So feel free to copy this down for now. Yeah. So G and H. Pardon? It is a lesson. I'm saying you're doing G and H after I'm finished the last one. Yes, Emma? Yep.
As we find the two numbers that will add up this and that will multiply the product. What do you do?
So the numbers that you use, so if you use -4 and 3, you would have to write the first term again. So the first term and the last term, they're the same, but the middle numbers are going to be the numbers that you use. So in this case, it will be -4x plus 3x. So over here, where was it? So you saw how we did -15 times 8 gave me -120, and then -15 plus 8 gave me -7. For this one over here.
How do we get?
That's for E.
For E?
I'm just giving you an example. So these were our factors, right?
Yeah.
Now, because in order to use method 1, I have to rewrite the whole equation. So I keep my first term the same, 20x squared. It stays the same. And -6 stays the same as well.
So how do we get 15 and 20 for that one?
We just use the numbers that we use as our factors. So -15 plus 8, you can use it as -15x plus 8x. Because when you add these guys up together, it gives you -7x.
Okay.
Yeah.
For H,
Mhm.
you know how you have like, for the crisscross method, you just have like a set there, would that be just like a one?
Yeah. For which one? H?
Yeah.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Yeah, it's just a 1, -1. Sorry. I forgot my alphabet. Okay, last question was similar to the one from your quiz. So a rectangular lot can be represented by the trinomial 12x squared plus 8x plus 1. What is the length and the width of the lot? So I have 12x squared plus 8x plus 1. So I need to figure out the length and the width of the lot, which means I need to factor. So how can I factor this question? So let's use the factor by grouping. So what is my product? Remember, we look up my first and my last number and we multiply them together. What's my product? Jade. Okay. What's my sum? Elisa? 8. Okay. Oh, thank you. Now I need two numbers that multiply to 12, but they add up to 8. So two numbers that multiply to 12, what are they? I can still hear you, girls. That gives me 12. I can still hear you. And what's 6 plus 2? 8. So, like I said, my first term stays the same. So 12x squared stays the same. What do you guys want to write next? Plus what? 6x? Yep. Plus 1. So now let's factor by grouping. So again, we look at my first two terms. So we have 12x squared and 6x. So what's the biggest common factor between 12 and 6? 6. And between x squared and x is just x. So I'm going to divide both of them by 6x. So what's 12 divided by 6? 2. What's x squared divided by x? Perfect. And what's 6x divided by 6x? 1. Any number divided by itself is always 1. So is there a common factor between 2x and 1? It's just 1. So whenever there's no factor, common factor, it's always going to be 1. So it's going to be plus 1. And then you're just left with 2x plus 1. So what's my final factor form going to be? Anyone? Sarah.
Did you do 6x and then bracket 2x plus 1 squared?
Nope. It's going to be 6x plus 1. Because remember, my common factor for 2x plus 1 is just 1. And then it's going to be 2x plus 1. Yes, Jade?
So for the length and width, you just basically solve it?
Yep. So what do you guys want my length to be? Pick one of the factors. Okay. So length is 6x plus 1. Yeah, you can choose any. It doesn't matter. And width is 2x plus 1. Okay. So now I can figure out b. So if x is 21 meters, what is my length and width going to be? Yeah, we'll sub in 21 for x. So my length is 6x plus 1. Let's plug in 21 for x. So what's 6 times 21? Rita? So 126 plus 1. My length is going to be 127 meters. Who can tell me what my width is going to be? What is my width going to be? 43. Okay. So I want you guys to do G and H on your own, and I'm going to come around and check for your solutions. So I'm going to keep these up so you guys can copy it down, and then after do G and H, and then I'll come around and check your answers.